guys should really make this tough, and everyone sits right in the front row. Just pull everybody in.
I don't think the lights are. I don't think the lights are bright enough. I don't think the lights are bright enough.
Sorry about that. We actually had like a detailed discussion about how low we can go while still getting on the camera. So,
Sure.
yeah. No, we have the room until we have lots of buffer on both sides.
Hi, Nancy. How are you?
You should at least get this little dish of popcorn. You know,
Oh, there's popcorn?
you can just smell it coming in.
Well, I saw it walking in, yeah. I mean, it's making me crazy.
It just doesn't be fair. You got to smell the popcorn.
Hello, everyone.
Carl Myers.
Hi, Shauna Diggs. Nice to meet you.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us for the 2024 Regent Candidate Forum. I'm Rebecca Modrak. I'm a professor in the Stamp School of Art and Design and the chair of the Faculty Senate. The event is hosted by SACUA and by the Faculty Senate Office, and this is significant because shared leadership involving elected faculty representatives and administrators is essential to the healthy functioning of the university. This evening, we're fortunate to have one of our colleagues as a moderator, Pauline Jones, a professor of political science at the University of Michigan and the Edie N. Goldenberg Endowed Director for the Michigan in Washington program. Dr. Jones is also the founder and director of the Digital Islamic Studies curriculum. Previously, she served as the director of UM's International Institute and Islamic Studies program. She has published articles in several leading academic and policy journals, regularly contributes expert commentary and analysis to media outlets on current events, and has authored or co-authored 5 books. Her current research focuses on state responses to mass protests in liberal regimes, including creating false narratives, information politics, and introducing moderate reforms, institutional and policy change. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Pauline Jones.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for being here. Welcome, good evening. Welcome to the Regent Candidates Forum. I want to thank the organizers of this very important public event, the Faculty Senate, and of course, SACUA. And of course, most importantly, the SACUA Chair, Rebecca Modrak, my colleague, and the Director of the Faculty Senate Office, Lucas McCarthy. Lucas, where are you? Because you deserve a big thank you. There he is back there. Thank you so much for all the time and effort and energy you put to this event, so thank you. Second, I want to thank all of the candidates for Regent very much for being here. It's so important. I want to thank you not just for your willingness to serve as regents if elected, or reserve as regent if elected, but also for your willingness to participate in this event. I want to also remind everyone that this forum, and this is one of the reasons I'm thanking you so much for being part of this forum is very much in the spirit of democracy and civic engagement. And as such, we are going to follow the university's policy regarding the disruption of public events with invited speakers. I doubt we have to worry about that, but it's something that we always do to inoculate ourselves just in case. So let me briefly just tell you what that university policy entails. It is the right of the members of the university community, speakers, artists, and other invited guests to express their views and opinions at the university. We will protect the right of individuals to speak or perform, and the right of those members of the university community who wish to hear and communicate with an invited speaker or artist. Protesters also have a right to express their opposition to a speaker in appropriate ways, both within the confines of the building and outside the facility. However, protesters must not interfere unduly with communication between a speaker or artist and members of the audience. If the hosts of this event or university representatives believe that protesters are interfering unduly with a speaker or performer's freedom of expression, those protesters will be warned. If the warnings are not heeded and the interference continues, then the individuals responsible may be removed from the building. Now, let's get on to the substantive part of the event tonight. I want to begin by introducing all of these candidates for Regent that have agreed to participate in this forum. Then I will ask each of the candidates the same 3 questions solicited from members of the Faculty Senate Assembly. Each candidate will have approximately 3 minutes to answer each question, and then we will open up the floor to allow members of the audience to suggest questions. We may not be able to take all of your questions, but when the time comes, you will be handed note cards to write questions, and then you can pass them to one of the Senate Assembly representatives, and we will do our best to ask and have your question addressed. But again, I cannot promise that every question will be addressed. We just don't have the time. So let me first introduce our 3 candidates for the Board of Regents. Dr. Shauna Ryder-Diggs is a University of Michigan alumnus, having completed the entirety of her education and residency at the University of Michigan. Dr. Diggs is also the founder of Cosmetic Dermatology, where she has had over 20 years of experience in cosmetic and laser dermatology. She served as a University of Michigan Regent from 2012 to 2020, making history as the first physician to ever serve on the board. During her tenure, she contributed to the Health Affairs Committee and served as board chair. She and her husband, Douglas Diggs, have 2 daughters. Welcome, Dr. Diggs.
Thank you.
Mr. Carl Myers, to her left, is a Senior Vice President of Investments for Raymond James and has been recognized as one of Detroit's top investment managers by Our Detroit magazine. He is a graduate of the University of Michigan Dearborn School of Business and a longtime advocate for affordable college education. He has over 25 years of experience with board governance, including as the chairman of the City of Dearborn's Police and Fire Board and its general employees' pension boards, with plan assets of over $500 million. Carl resides in Dearborn, Michigan with his wife, Mary. He has 3 children and 2 grandchildren. Welcome, Mr. Myers. And finally, we have Mr. Sevag Vartanian, who was born and raised in Dearborn, Michigan. He is a 1991 graduate of the University of Michigan, making me feel very old, where he earned his Bachelor of Science in Actuarial Mathematics. Mr. Vartanian continued his education at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, where he earned his MBA in Finance and Statistics. For over 30 years, he has worked in the finance sector. Currently, he runs a boutique asset management firm called Vartanian Capital Management, working with clients all over the country. He and his wife, Kanar, are raising their 3 sons in Novi, Michigan. Welcome to you, Mr. Vartanian. And go blue, all these University of Michigan alums. So let me start with our first question. This past summer, the current Board of Regents adopted several policies that limit students' rights to protest on campus. In particular, the Statement of Student Rights and Responsibilities was changed substantially. These changes were adopted without consultation with elected faculty government, which, according to the student statement, ought to play the central role in the amendment process. Additionally, the Regents voted to create a new institutional neutrality bylaw without consulting with elected faculty representatives. Faculty across the university have expressed concern about the increasingly top-down leadership style of the Regents. These are just a few recent examples. The question is, what do you think is the Board of Regents' role in writing policy, and how would you ensure that the voice of elected faculty governance is informing policy within our campus community? And if I may, I'd like to start with Mr. Myers and go from left to right for this question.
There you go. I get the first one, huh?
Yes, you do.
Well, Pauline, thank you. Thank you for moderating tonight. And thank you for everybody that took time out of your day to come. Thank you to the Faculty Senate, and thank you to all the folks that are going to be watching on YouTube. This is a great question. Thank you. First, when I started running for this office, and I've run a couple of times before, I went and looked at the Michigan Constitution to see what the role of a regent is, or at Michigan State or Wayne State, what the role of their board is. And this was amended in 1963 in the state constitution. It's a very broad, and I think it was very broad by design. But the main charge is general supervision of the institution and control and direct expenditures. That's it. It's a couple of sentences. So the job of the regent is subject to interpretation, but looking at this and looking at general supervision, that would mean that, they have to oversee the university. And there was some policy changes this summer, namely with the student handbook, the rights of protest. I think it could have been done better. It could have been done in an open forum. And it should have had input from all the major stakeholders at the university. That's a pretty broad statement, but it really reflects also what my governance style is. My governance style is open and transparent. I'm here, I'm not someplace else, because I think it's important to have a dialogue and conversation. Regarding the rights and neutrality statement, I believe that the university should have always been neutral. And I think that impacts everything from enrollment to diversity to who you attract to the faculty. I've heard too many stories of students avoiding the University of Michigan simply because of the political slant that they believed exists on campus. So I don't look at these things as a problem. I look at them as an opportunity to change. And change is not an indictment of the past. Change is an opportunity to move forward. So I'm here today. I think that all stakeholders should have input into, major and significant decisions. And that certainly this is an opportunity to move the university forward if done in a constructive fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Diggs, would you like to follow? Thank you.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today and engage. I'm looking forward to our conversation. So regarding this question, I'll begin with, as a physician, my style day to day is very inclusive. I listen to what someone has to tell me. I look at data and information, and then we have a conversation around what we can do, both to investigate further and to get more information, and then to make a decision about what our plan is going to be moving forward. So that is the style that I take to any board on which I serve, and I've served on many. But I think it's good because it involves all stakeholders, it's data-driven, and then it's more of a consensus-building style. Now, I understand that at a university, our job isn't always to build consensus. I mean, we're a very diverse place, with 3 campuses, with medical centers across the state. But we do have a responsibility as an educational space to listen to everyone, to engage stakeholders, to talk about issues, to enlist experts, of which we have many on this campus, who know, they have real knowledge, do research on the topics at hand, and then decide as a group what we're going to do moving forward. So regarding the regents and the leadership team, it's true, as Mr. Myers stated, really a board, a good governing board that's high functioning, should be high level, right? My job would be to ask questions, to challenge the leadership team, to talk to stakeholders. But in the end, I'm really assisting. I am not top down. The leadership team that's here day to day, the faculty, the staff, the students, the ones in the space all the time are the ones that are really running the university. The main things that the board does, number one, is select, hire, and fire the president and vote on the budget each year. Now, the budget's a big stick, right? So if you deciding where the money goes decides where the programming goes, right? It decides a lot of things. So it is a big piece of it. But in the end, it's just an up or down vote. All the details are done by the leadership team. And that is the case with these policies as well. So leadership team members usually are getting all the information, giving them information to the board, and then the board gets to say yes or no. I do think it is important to have the right voices at the table. Certain, voices are different, and I think my voice is different. As a physician in a space where many people tend to be attorneys and lobbyists and more in economic spaces, I think about problems and problem solving a little bit differently, and so I can add that voice to the table. I wanted to talk about one thing with the institutional neutrality. My understanding of that, not being here, none of us are on the board, so we're all talking sort of relatively speaking, but is that a faculty committee was started. And that's usually how it goes. A faculty committee is begun, and that committee looks at the problem and the issues over many, many months and then writes a report. I think the report was 147 pages. I actually printed it. I haven't read the whole thing. But that process is the place where stakeholders should really be involved. That committee should be asking the faculty senate what their thoughts are, should be asking students what their thoughts are, should be looking at the data and asking the experts on campus what their thoughts are, should be asking experts around the country and around the world what their thoughts are. Then that committee that's looked at something for 6 to 8 months then goes and gives the final report that includes all of the information from the stakeholders. Regarding the specific student policy, that wasn't a faculty committee, I think. I think that was more of a leadership team thing. And so when large, broadly affecting, wide scope policies are changed, everything always works better when you involve people. When you're transparent, when you communicate, the best work is done. Even if not everyone agrees on everything that's laid down in the end. But to do something without being inclusive in thought and commentary, it makes it more difficult. And so our best work is done when we all work together.
Thank you so much. Mr. Vartanian.
The manner in which the Statement of Student Rights and Responsibilities was changed did not allow time for meaningful debate by faculty and students. By allowing the university to become a complainant, judge, and jury, it seems extremely heavy-handed to me. And I think that's something that should be reconsidered in the future, hopefully, in January after I win. The policy of institutional neutrality, it's based on a paper written in 1967 at the University of Chicago. So why now? I think I think the policy is a means by which the university can avoid having meaningful discussions about uncomfortable topics. I am a strong proponent of free speech, and I look at universities as a place where vigorous debate should be had in the open square. I really think it's just a cop-out so they don't have to take a stance. I mean, they reference that, we have all these experts that should be having the debates and talking about it, but, sometimes, I mean, there are two options for someone that doesn't want to answer a question. One, they could say, I have my personal views on this matter that I don't want to discuss, and two, I according to the principle of institutional neutrality, I'm not going to take a stand on that. I think they're both kind of cop-outs, and especially like as a regent position, which is an elected position, you have the right to talk to your elected officials about what they're doing and what their policies are. When you take away to question them, or they refuse to speak to you, they're not really serving you. Too many people think that once they get elected into office, they have all this power. But the reality is, when we take office, we go down in society. We become servants. And I think that's the mindset that we have to have. Because, this university isn't just a bunch of buildings where good things happen. It's the people, the faculty and the students that make this university what it is. And as regents, we need to guide that mission. And, like Shauna said, we have control over the budget and hiring and firing of the president. And, by those mechanisms, we can guide the direction that the school goes. and we need to be in touch with the people who are the source of our strength, and that's you. That's the faculty. Now, when it comes to limiting the right to protest on campus, college campuses in this country have historically played a significant role in political activism, and I will always defend the students' right to free speech and to assemble. That is just part of our history as Americans. Too many places in this world don't allow that to happen. I might not agree with you, but I will defend your right to say what you have to say, because the First Amendment is not there to protect speech that we all agree with. It's there to protect the speech we disagree with. And we should be having debates about these things. You know, I used to think, 2 years ago when I was here, I used to think conservative speech is being stifled on campus. How little did I know just 2 years ago? It seems, after talking to a bunch of different faculty and students, it seems a lot of speech from all sides of the political spectrum are being stifled on campus. You know, when somebody, raises an issue to their department head that concerns them, and they're told, hey, just stay in your lane, that's not right. That's not having dialogue. That doesn't create a work environment that you want to be part of. It gives you a sense of hostility, and how dare you question what's going on here? This is the university policy. No, we should be questioning everything. That's how science is conducted. I wanted to talk about a couple of things here. When I sat down with some of these students who were involved in these protests, they're just crying out to be heard. I saw in their eyes just hope that someone's going to listen to them. I didn't agree with everything that they had to say, but they have the right to say it, and they have the right to be heard and considered. When they told me that they wake up every morning and check on Facebook to see if any of their relatives had been killed in Gaza overnight, I was heartbroken. I'm an Armenian American. My grandfather on my father's side was an oil worker in Iran. My grandmother on my mother's side was a survivor of the Armenian genocide. She came here because a Turkish family had the decency to take her in, give her a Turkish name, and hide her until they could get her to the orphanage. And she got here through Ellis Island. When you see the destruction that's taking place in Gaza right now, we have to have empathy. We don't have to agree with the policies, but these students deserve to be heard. Faculty deserves to be heard. These are serious issues, and it's been going on for thousands of years, and we might not solve it today, we might not solve it next month, but gosh, these kids, they need to have their voices heard, because once you take away their voice, you're kicking them out of society. So I will always defend their right, even though I didn't agree with everything that they had to say. So I am open. They can convince me otherwise, and I can try and convince them otherwise, but we have to have more dialogue on campus. And I'll tell you, it's a joy coming here and talking to professors of different subjects. I was a math guy. I had 60 plus hours of math, but gosh, I wish I had taken a photography class here. I could use some help in the art category. We offer so much as a university to the world. We have to do all we can to maintain that and continue that tradition for the next 100 years. I'll stop there.
You will certainly get some more opportunity to talk about these other issues as well, I'm sure. Let me turn to the second question that is based on the solicitation from the Faculty Senate Assembly. This question is about diversity, equity, and inclusion program, so it follows in some ways from the first. Diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI programs at the University of Michigan and elsewhere were created to address systemic societal challenges. Nonetheless, these DEI programs seem to be under attack on campuses across the country. Meanwhile, the University of Michigan faces real issues and real challenges when it comes to improving economic access and increasing racial, ethnic, and other forms of diversity. what specific actions do you think the Regents could take, including budgetary support, to ensure that the University of Michigan continues to prioritize the goals that are associated with DEI? And I wonder if we could start, I hate to do this to you, but if we could start with you, Dr. Diggs. Okay, thank you.
DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. First, I'd like to talk about what I think it is. So to me, inclusion is about using everyone's talents. It's not about doing something sort of morally right, although I do think it is that too. But it's about using everyone's talents to help solve all of our problems and get the best work done. So historically in this country, we have not used everyone's talents. We've used actually a very small percentage of people's talents, which might be why a lot of our problems still exist, right? So across that spectrum, inclusivity to me means race. As an African-American woman, I understand 100% what DEI means. And I have learned that not only from my own personal experiences, but also from my parents, my grandparents, my family members, my friends, my network, right? It's not something that has been an issue in the last 10 years or the last 50 or the last 100. It's been thousands of years around the world we've had issues with diversity, equity, inclusion. But certainly in this country, as long as we've been here, we've had issues with this, right? But it also means geographic, rural students, urban students. It means socioeconomic, students who from families making $20,000 a year and students from families who are here on this campus making $20 million a year or more, right? It means ableness. Are you someone who has a disability that we can all see, like my color, my being a person of color you can see, or is it a disability that you cannot see, right? There are so many ways that we do not use everyone's talents. And so to me, we start there. I always use the example that there might be some 10-year-old here in Michigan who could actually be the person who discovers the cure for cancer. As a physician, I care about that. But that child may not have all the tools that they need to actually learn what they need to learn to discover the cure, right? So as a university, I'm interested in making sure that we pull in people with ability, people with high work ethic, who want to be inquisitive and learn and try to discover something new, innovative, do research, and answer questions and solve problems. So how does a regent do that? I think the first thing is commitment to the concept. I would say most regents do. I think it may differ in levels of commitment, but most people understand and agree with the general concept. The second is through the budget. So one of the things we did when I was a regent was start the Go Blue Guarantee, which provided free tuition for families of four making $55,000 or less. What it really did was encourage people who think they don't belong here to apply. We did a pilot study prior to starting the Go Blue Guarantee. We sent letters that said free tuition to half of a group by certain zip codes. We sent another letter that said, you'll get financial aid. The people who got the word free, twice as many students applied. Part of our issue is that people don't feel welcome, so they do not apply. They feel like they can't afford it. The place isn't for them. They're not enough of their kind here. There's so many reasons. But how do we as regents, how can we instill some policies that actually can change behavior? So we did a pilot study, it worked, and now we have the Go Blue Guarantee. Now it's been expanded to $75,000 or less, right? So that's over half the people in the state. But if you look at rural students or urban students or these students or this student, it actually is higher, right? So for rural students, it may be 80% of the students can come here for free. So it is an inclusion policy, not just a financial affordability policy, right? So these are sort of the innovative ways that you can affect policy and get things to change. So one thing we could do is raise the number. One thing we could do is include housing and room and board. So there are other things that we can do to expand that. But there's another problem. So one is now saying, I could actually be there, I can afford it, so I'm going to apply. The second is being prepared to be here. Not just prepared in an academic way, but prepared to be here. This is a challenging place, a challenging space to live and work. I mean, you just heard us talking about how students feel on campus. So part of it is having a campus culture where people feel heard, they feel welcome in the classroom, they feel welcome in the dorm, they feel welcome on campus. They feel that what they bring to the table that is different is okay and is exalted, not people trying to put it down. And then a place where differences really can improve our campus versus just being tolerated. Being tolerated. So how do we do that? I'm a big fan of using our university as a place to have difficult conversations, right? People should be able to talk. If we can't do it here at the University of Michigan, I don't know where people are going to do it. How can all of us from different walks of life sit in various rooms and classrooms and talk and have difficult conversations about things we do not agree? And to those conversations, bring our personal life experiences, right? And so I think much of what's been happening over the last year with the Gaza conflict, when I was a regent, we saw it when there were people in the dorm who had nooses drawn in their door. I mean, we always have issues at the University of Michigan by bringing so many different people together who are so dissimilar, right? And so, but as regents, we can have spaces. We can say it is okay to say what you think. It's okay. Freedom of speech should be free. I'm a really big proponent of freedom of speech. Now, with it goes some responsibilities, right? Nonviolent, let people speak, let people be heard. If you don't agree, you can say it later. You don't have to blast it out right when they're talking, right? So I'll give you an example of what I did when I was a regent. So when I was a regent, there was a white supremacist who wanted to speak on campus. I don't know if everyone remembers that, but it was a really big issue for the board. Many board members felt that the person should not be allowed to speak. I actually thought the person should be allowed to speak. I think that person should be able to say exactly what they think to our campus and then also hear the response of the people in our community. Now that should be regulated. You can't just walk on the diag and speak. We're a campus that's a public campus, but we have rules here. So we gave him different times, different places, different dates where he could speak, right? I think in total he may have gotten 7 options, turned every single one down. Because the goal really wasn't to speak. It was to make all of us think about what this means. How are we going to handle it? It's a way of stimulating the community, both in good and bad ways, sometimes pitting people against one another, right? When I spoke at the board table about how I felt, I used an example from Martin Luther King in Birmingham, Alabama. He applied for a permit, right, follow the rules and regulations for a permit to have a march and speak, and it was denied by the city. He did the march anyway, right? So he chose to do the march anyway. And then he was arrested, went to the Birmingham jail, and wrote the letter from the Birmingham jail. So I use that example as sort of what I mean. There are rules around it. He was denied, but he marched anyway, and that's okay. He did it in a nonviolent way, and he suffered the consequences. He was arrested, but he wrote this letter. Looking back, history has made him, right, the preeminent person to sort of exemplify how we exercise our freedom of speech. It also, to me, was a reason why I did not deny the white supremacists from speaking on campus. He should be able to speak. One day, I'm going to be the one who wants to speak, and I want the permit, right? So to me, freedom of speech goes all ways. Everyone should be able to say what they want to say within the rules and regulations in a nonviolent way that allows conversation. And then everyone gets to hear and think. It challenges even me how I think about something, and then that's how we get progress and change over decades.
Thank you, Dr. Diggs. I'm going to have to move on to the next speaker, but I appreciate your remarks. Thank you. So I let Mr. Mr. Myers start the first time. And would you like to, I'm going to let you choose. Would you like to go second this time, or would you like to go third?
It doesn't matter, whatever the moderator would like.
Okay, well, I think that I was going to have Mr. Vartanian go next, and then you would get the option to be last on the third question. Does that work well? Okay, thank you.
All right, so DEI. I was fortunate to have the Detroit News publish an article that I wrote about DEI. It was a couple months ago. Basically, yeah, diversity is good. Diversity of thought is great. Having more people contribute and brainstorm gets to the solution much more quickly. Inclusivity is definitely necessary in a representative republic like we have here in this country. If you're not including people in the process, how are they going to buy into the solution? We don't want to have heavy-handed approaches. Now, equity is something that's earned. I stand for equality of opportunity. Shauna brought up a good point as far as the candidates that are coming into these, that are applying to Michigan. It's a difficult environment to learn, and if you're not prepared, we're going to have a hard time. K through 12 is where all that preparation starts, and we should be focusing more efforts on ways to improve the educational system in K through 12, and, researching, seeing what works, and how to improve the results, because there are plenty of qualified people, yet if not exposed to the learning, they lose hope and they go on different tracks and don't have an opportunity to make it here. I'm all for that. Now, what we have to look at as an institution, the New York Times article that came out, what was the headline here? It said, "A decade and $250 million later, students and faculty are more frustrated than ever." Shauna's right. This Go Blue guarantee was a means to get more qualified, diverse students in, and it's really bringing in, rural people, but a lot more rural white guys. All right, let's call it what it is. That's what's happening. So we have to reassess the approach. What are the variables? What does success look like? Tell me, what in this country, in this state, what does a diverse campus look like? I look around the room. We have a pretty diverse faculty here. I go to campus, and they're all shapes and sizes there. But what is the goal? If we can't quantify it, how are we going to know when we've met our goals? Let's try applying the scientific method to the whole process. Also, 2 years ago at this forum, I brought up a program that the university is already involved with, the SMASH program. It was developed by the Kapoor Center in Oakland, California, and they go out there, and it's on a merit-based. It's a merit-based process where they work with high school students, starting in like 8th or 9th grade, and they hold workshops. Summer courses at the corresponding university, and they help prepare these kids with supplemental learning and exposure to job opportunities. I think a program like that is sustainable. It takes longer to achieve all your goals, but I think it's sustainable, and it puts people where they need to be. It goes out there and finds this talent. It's recruiting the talent. We have a large university with many different schools and departments. Why not let different departments try different things? Do experiments. The trial and error method, it was always my favorite in science class. That's one way of looking at it. There's one department at this school that I think does an excellent job in diversity, and it's fully funded, and they have great results. It's the athletic department. How do they manage to be at the top of the leaderboard in so many different sports year after year? It's recruiting. They're going out there and they're actively looking for the best people for the job. It's a meritocracy, And Ward Manuel, he's done a phenomenal job. And he earned that job. He was at State University of Buffalo, I think it was first, and then he was at University of Connecticut, did a fabulous job there. And he interviewed here and got the job, and he's done phenomenally well. I wouldn't change anything about the athletic program. You know, they're doing what they need to do. So we should be learning from these successful examples on how to approach it, because I think the way we've approached it isn't really working out the way we wanted it to. Because in my eyes, the objective of DEI is to put people of color in places where they're going to thrive, so they can go back and be an example and inspire others to work harder and do better. And if we go out there and if we follow the path of, for example, UCLA Medical School, earlier this year a whistleblower came out and explained how they took the easy way out. They lowered their admission standards based on race in order to achieve their DEI objectives. And the result was that, you know, in some cohorts it was said that, you know, half the students couldn't pass basic medical exams. That's not the outcome that we want. I believe it said the medical school went from being ranked 6th to 18th. We don't want to lower standards to get more people in. We want to keep the standards high and recruit the best, because anything else is a disservice.
Thank you, Mr. Vertini. I'm going to move on to our last speaker for this question, Mr. Myers.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this question. Great question. I'm glad we have a chance to talk about it. You know, as a Regent, I think of, you know, what do I have to offer? Am I capable of doing the job? And I always believe that a person is a sum of their life experiences. And it's one thing to talk about diversity, another thing to live diversity, and I believe diversity is always best when it's organic. I live in a very diverse community. I live in Dearborn, Michigan, where over 50% of the population is now Muslim. But we don't look at them as Muslim. They're our neighbors. We celebrate Ramadan with them, wish them a happy Ramadan and the wonderful iftar dinner. They celebrate our Easter, our Christmas. And we exist, and we've gone past who we are, where we came from, what our religion is. That is what true diversity is. And we've experienced it in our family, that my wife and I sent our two sons to UD Jesuit High School in Detroit. We sent them from Dearborn into Detroit at 7 Mile, Illinois, for a great education, but even more so they could get an education about life. And at UD Jesuit, I believe at the time there was about 25% of the students came from the city. They were given scholarships. We helped fund those scholarships and produced some really brilliant kids. 99% went to college. And I remember speaking with the families and speaking with them about, why don't you go to the University of Michigan? The number one factor was it's just too expensive. It's too expensive. We had students that could go to any college or university in the country. They chose not to come here because the perception was it's too expensive. And University of Michigan is one of the highest priced public universities in the country. And I've said it before that, you know, a lot of families and a lot of people have an aversion to debt, student debt. In this country right now, we have an addiction problem in higher education. It's called student debt, and student debt is the opiate of higher education. And a lot of people do not want to take on the debt. So I would argue that there's great students out there, but we've got to create the right environment. And I applaud the Go Blue guarantee, but there's a lot of work to be done on it. It needs to be expanded dramatically, because there's another part of the equation to the 18,000 roughly of tuition. There's that room, board, transportation factor. And if you want them to get a part-time job to pick up half of it, they're working someplace while everybody else is studying, you know, setting them up. Perhaps there's some level of failure. So it's one thing to get the students in, but it's another thing. We have to ensure that we get them out. We have to boost the graduation rates of the underrepresented minorities in the school. So diversity can be achieved, but I believe it has to be organic, and it has to be embraced, and we have to be open to the possibility that there's other ways to do things. And I see it in my own community, but one of the things that has not been receptive here is diversity of thought. And I think that is another reason why a lot of students have avoided the University of Michigan. My own daughter was a victim of it. My own daughter was here in 2000, she was at the Dearborn campus in 2016 during the presidential election. And my daughter went to a Catholic school, so she had a certain set of values that may not have aligned with a lot of the others that were in class. She stated her views on politics. She wanted Donald J. Trump to win. She was harassed. She was ostracized in the class and the way out of the class under the supervision of the teacher. There was a point she didn't want to go back simply because of her political views. So students that come here that are forced to self-censor is wrong. We're failing. We're failing. We have to be open to the possibility that there's a better way to do things. We have to be tolerant of others. And for too long, we haven't been tolerant, but we have to lead by example also. But here's some things we can do to address the problem. I call it APR. It's not on your credit card, but it's action number one, it's partner, and it's recruit. Now, I would argue that there are highly qualified students in Southwest Detroit and other underrepresented minorities around the state of Michigan, and they could be up in the Upper Peninsula, they could be in Benton Harbor, they could be in Port Huron, or they could be in Monroe, that are highly qualified to get here. But there's a big perception problem, number one, with the University of Michigan, and there's the cost factor. Because if it's $36,000 the first year, it doesn't take a math genius to figure out what it costs for 4 years. And these are people that may not have the means. And that is one group that we have to give them a hand up. We have to pull them up and give them a hand out at the same time. But there's also the group of the middle class. A lot of middle class families that don't qualify for the Gold Blue Guarantee. $75,000 and it will dovetail and it will decrease and go away as your income goes up. But not all families making $75,000 are equal. Some may have 4 children where the parents are working 2 jobs. Some may have 1 child where there's 1 parent working. That has to be expanded. And we have to give assistance to the middle class in this family. Student debt right now in this country is $1.8 trillion. That's with a T. During the financial crisis in 2009, that was only $900 million. And in the whole country today, there's only $1 trillion of consumer debt. And it just shows you that we have utilized student debt far too much, and people have an aversion to it. They are afraid of it. So what we have to do is we have to take action. We have to go out, dialogue, recruit, educate to the wonderful schools that we have in the state of Michigan. And I'll say that because having nearly 50% come from out of state, I think is wrong also, that should be capped at a lower number. But we have to talk to the counselors, we have to talk to the students, mostly we have to talk to the parents, because the parents are the traffic directors, they are the quarterback of where the students are going to go to college. So if we want a diverse student body here, and I've said it before, a diverse student body is essential. Listen to me, it's essential to the learning experience, and that's diversity of the student body, diversity of the faculty, and diversity of the administration. And that will also include diversity of thought as well, and have all of those parties be receptive, then I think we can make some progress. But the University of Michigan is it's an incredible, institution, and the knowledge base that we have here, that we can share that with the K through 12 partners that we have out there. And I think that there's an opportunity to go forward. And I said in the beginning that change is not an indictment of the past. You don't have to degrade and degradate what's happened. But it's an opportunity to go forward. And I think we have a tremendous opportunity to go forward. I've seen it in my own community where we've moved past that in Dearborn. And keep in mind that Dearborn had really a terrible reputation because of the events that happened in the 50s and 60s. So we've been able to change. I think we all can change, but I think it really takes innovation, it takes work to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we had more time, I would love to engage each of you on this question of the cost of education, because all of you have expressed concern with the cost of education, and the remedy seems to be to remediate that by helping families by either the Go Blue Guarantee, which is a wonderful program, or somehow compensating families. But why is the cost of education so high? That's something we don't talk about and would be something that I would love to engage all of you with, but we don't have time, unfortunately. Well, we'll talk about it afterwards. How's that? I do have a third question. Again, these were questions that were solicited in advance, so I want to make sure that I'm representative and inclusive, and I ask all of the questions that were solicited. So this one is I would say related in many ways to the other two. Earlier this month, you may be aware that a recording was released in which our president, Santa Ono, admitted that Congress had focused almost entirely on anti-Semitism on college campuses, including the University of Michigan's, without considering also how to combat other hatred like Islamophobia, and that this has created pressure on his presidency to respond to anti-Semitism, but not to other acts of hate like Islamophobia. Given that Congress is exerting this unbalanced pressure on the university, and specifically on the president of our university, what would you do as regent to ensure that all members of the university community, including Arab and Muslim students, staff, and faculty, are protected? And this time, I am going to start with Mr. Vartanian.
The thought that Congress would withhold university funding because it wanted to protect all students and faculty from racism is hard to get my arms around. I mean, that's just preposterous. I mean, if this is actually true, it provides President Ono with an incredible opportunity to show what kind of leader he is. Will he do what is right and fight for both anti-Semitism and anti-Islamophobia? Or will he pick a side and take the funding? We teach our kids to stand up to bullies. The University of Michigan should be leading by example. I don't know all the facts of this case, what was said by whom, who promoted it. But we really have an opportunity here to lead by example. If Congress wants to violate the law and say you have to protect this class of people, but you have to let this other class of people fend for themselves, that's just not right. And we should not allow that to happen. So I'm interested to see what kind of coalition President Ono can pull together with other major universities, and let our voices be heard that this is not okay. We are against anti-Semitism. We don't care for Islamophobia. We don't care for prejudice or racism of any kind on our campuses. I think we have an opportunity to make a bold statement here, but let's see what our leadership does. That's all I got.
Okay, now I've lost track. Who should be second? I think it's Dr. Diggs. Yes, correct.
So, when I read this question, I had a couple of thoughts. So first, I believe that societal tensions are increasing over these decades because of changing demographics in the country, right? So changing demographics really puts pressure on some groups more than others, right? But change is going to happen. But as it does, I think that tensions are increasing. We see so much more uncivil discourse nationwide. And it's being exemplified by some of our leaders. And so it's almost natural that sort of filters down to universities, right, to all of us, that people become more strident in their speech. So I think that's been happening on our campus for quite some time, but it's absolutely true that October 7th with the Gaza conflict just worsened it, right? So the pain and suffering of the students at the concert, the hostages, the families, followed by the pain and suffering of tens of thousands of Palestinians, both groups with families and friends here in the United States, definitely in Michigan, has just brought all of that tension and emotion right to U of M's campus. And it gives us either an opportunity to show how we can talk about this or ways that we obviously don't seem to talk about it well. Because really, I think our university is just a microcosm of society. So we're seeing things that the whole world's talking about really intensified here on campus. So as a part of that, we have seen much more anti-Semitism, Islamophobia on campus. There's no doubt about it. I think the university, the leadership, the president, the board have to take just the absolute most firm stance against Islamophobia, racism, anti-Semitism, sexism. We just cannot have any wavering about the fact that personal attacks, violence, attacks based on things that are our identity alone makes no sense and will not be tolerated on campus. So I think we start there. We can discuss ideas, but we can't actually have one-on-one personal attacks just based on our ethnicity, our religion, where we're from, what gender we are. And I think that will go a long way. Now, is it absolute protection? No. It tries to make the culture on campus the right culture. But the truth is that each week, students are being harassed, faculty are being harassed for who they are and what they stand for. When that happens, I think there needs to be disciplinary action. I mean, you can't just use words and then not stand behind what we think. But that's different from discussing a conflict or discussing ideas. And so I think that we have a responsibility to model what that looks like on campus, what good protest looks like, what having symposia talking about issues, what that actually should look like, doing it the right way, and perhaps we can even model it for the rest of the country. I think that for the president, it's sort of interesting. I think university campuses all over the country are having this challenge, including all the various presidents that we've seen. So, they're in a very difficult spot. But I think this is just one of those moments where courage matters. Courage to do the right thing, say the right thing, be a true leader, which is difficult. But I think that as the leader and best, that's what we need to be doing here at the University of Michigan.
Thank you very much. And please, Mr. Meyer.
Sean and I went to college together, and so I've known her a long time.
Thank you. And thank you for this question. And, I've got to say that the president could have done a better job. The University of Michigan is better than this. That if there's an issue, you can't hide from it. You've just got to put it out there. You've got to be open. You've got to be transparent. You should have walked in and said, we have a problem with anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. It is rampant around the country. We are not immune to it by just seeing one side. And it's terrible. So I think you could have done a much better job, but it speaks really to the bigger question here. And I think that the university could have handled the protests at the onset of the conflict in a much better way. It seemed to me there was inaction, then there was too much action, and it perhaps got out of hand, but the university could have handled it a lot better. I have a zero tolerance for hate of all kinds, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, sexual, political. It's just not right. And I think it's, once again, it's an opportunity. But I think first here at the University of Michigan, we have to face a problem that we have. we have a crisis of trust right now. We have a crisis of trust, and we don't talk to each other enough. And, part of, getting to know what's happening on campus, I sat down with a group of Muslim students and their families a couple of weeks ago and got to hear their side of the story and what their concerns with and what their fears were and how they didn't feel that things were equitable for them. It goes back to DEI. It was not equitable for them. And it was eye-opening. But in my own family, we have a Jewish branch of our family. My niece was born in Israel. I have nephews that are descendants of Holocaust survivors. So I have an understanding of what they're feeling. And as I said that night, in a quiet conversation, it's always the little people that suffer. It's always them. While the leadership maneuvers and does their thing, it's the leadership that doesn't suffer. It's the small people that suffer, and we can see it. We can see it every day. But it comes down to we have to provide a safe environment at the University of Michigan that is equitable for all. And we can't not face a problem that we may have. And I think the president missed an opportunity. He missed an opportunity to say the University of Michigan is bigger than this. We have Islamic students here. We have Jewish students here. We have Christian students here. We have progressive students here. We've got conservative students here. And when a group is having a problem, we address it. We address it, but you cannot have your thumb on the scale because everybody will see right through you. And to go into Congress and not say what's on your mind, we are one of the finest educational institutions in the world. There's been here a heck of a long time. These folks in Congress come and go, and they pander to the press. Their only goal is to get reelected, and they'll use every opportunity that they can. But we're here before they got to Congress, and the University of Michigan will be here after they leave Congress, and I think we have to stick up for ourselves a lot better, and we have to do better on this. But once again, we have a crisis of trust. We have a crisis of trust. I've talked to faculty, I've talked to administration. Everybody is on edge. Nobody's talking to each other. We have to do better with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think this is a good segue to one of our, if I can ask an audience question from the audience. Many of the themes that you've touched on, I think, are come out in this question. Research at the University of Michigan is in sharp decline. Many attribute this to the disproportionate influence of administrators relative to the faculty. Great universities foster faculty governance, but this is not the case at the University of Michigan. This is obviously someone's opinion, a strong opinion. In a previous forum, I asked two important questions to the candidates. Unfortunately, they failed to follow through on the commitments that they made in response. I will present these questions again to this panel. First, will you commit to restoring decision-making power to the faculty? And second, will you publicly disclose the bonuses received by the University of Michigan executive officers, so the administrators? Who would like to begin?
They're not public?
I have no fact-checking capability. The first question was, will you commit to restoring decision-making power to the faculty? It's not clear that the faculty ever had really decision-making power, but the idea is, do you think faculty should be included in the decision-making process, I think? And then will you publicly disclose the bonuses received by U of M executive officers? I don't, A, know that they receive bonuses, or B, know that whether that's public information. I don't.
Well, I'll answer. So I think that for this, the devil's in the details. So the faculty at Michigan has always been a very strong faculty. So I'd actually want to know more about how the decision-making is being taken away from the faculty and given to whom. Does that mean given to the deans? Does that mean given to the chairs? Like, who is it being given to? Because the provost at Michigan is the ultimate, the ultimate person, and then that person, then the deans and the chairs. But faculty have academic control, control over their research, control over or their investigations. And so if that's changing, I think that's something that the details need to be known. And then for the bonuses, my impression, I mean, I haven't been a regent for years, but my impression is that the bonuses that are, when bonuses are given out, raises are given out for the year, and they may be in the 1% to 3% range, usually based on the CPI, that the bonuses tend to run about the same. I've never seen, I personally don't remember ever seeing huge bonuses at Michigan. It's always usually centered around these percentages, inflationary percentages, things like that. So there'll be a range, just like for faculty, just like for staff, of 1% to 3%, and then people may be more in the 3% or more in the 1%. So, but in terms of something really out there, like, so I'm on other boards where people get 5%, 10% sometimes, 10, but I don't remember ever seeing that at Michigan, so.
Thank you very much. Do either of the other, yes, please, Mr. Myers.
I'd like to, tackle that one. The first is on this, on the faculty involvement, and it gets back to when I read the Michigan Constitution in the, once again, very broad statement by the authors in 1963, but it gets down to oversight. And how can you have effective and deep oversight of what's happening if you're not involving one of your stakeholders, which is the faculty? And as far as the growth, really the growth of the administration, can we call it what it is, growth of the bureaucracy? Because that's what they are. And what's interesting is if you go back to the 1980s and 70s and look at the ratio of administrators to faculty to students versus what it is today, and, it's grown significantly. And I believe and once again, I'm not privy to the documents that are out there, but I believe that there's full disclosure on the bonuses and what is allotted out there. But I've not seen the contracts, the employment contracts, and I'm not sure if there are other bonuses, perhaps, in the investment office or someplace else that are extraordinary or different than this whole process. But it's very difficult for me from the outside looking in. But once again, I think, and I said it in the beginning, is that my style of board governance is transparency. And, the best disinfectant, as they say, is sunlight. Put it out there. Because these things tend to grow and it breeds mistrust. I was just talking about that. It breeds mistrust. When everybody's wondering if somebody got more, somebody got less, or if somebody paid more for the same amount of work, it breeds mistrust. So transparency, openness, and once again, inclusion. We have to include the faculty in the oversight and decision-making process. I'm not saying that they're going to have a vote, but certainly if you're not talking to them, it's really, something that's short-sighted.
Thank you. Mr. Vartanian, I'm going to give you a chance as well.
If a bonus is given to somebody for the work that they did, I'm not gonna out them. I'm not gonna commit to that. They have their salary, they do their work. If they're being rewarded, it's personal. I don't think anybody here would want all their financial information put out there. So, I'm not going to commit to outing somebody's bonus. It's okay. We can disagree on certain things. We don't have to see eye to eye on everything. I'm here to work with the faculty. I think you're an invaluable resource, and I would like to see, I would like to see more involvement. It surprises me that that there's not as much exchange, one-on-one exchange between professors and regents, and you don't have the access that you deserve.
So let me segue to another question, because it really pinpoints what you're saying. I think what you are all hinting at, but it's asking very specifically that if you are elected or reelected, will you advocate for a regular speaking slot at every regent's meeting for the chair of SACWA? Why or why not? So if in fact the faculty should be involved and there should be transparency and inclusion, would it make sense to institutionalize that?
I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to have the chair speak for 5-10 minutes at a regents meeting. I don't know what the appropriate time frame is, but yeah, there should be input. I mean, how else are the people, if the regents are at the top, how else are they going to know what's going on way down below if they're not talking to people? They're not talking to people on the ground. I mean, it just seems like common sense.
But should SACWA have a seat at the table? I think that's what the question is.
Like a vote?
It's not going as far as a vote, but actually representation of some kind, that it's institutionalized. They can come to meetings, they can hear what's being said, and they can offer the opinions, or they can bring information back to the Senate to talk to the faculty.
I am totally open to that. I think it fosters more dialogue. So why would I be opposed to that?
Thank you. Dr. Diggs or Mr. Myers, do you want to comment on that specific?
Sure.
Okay.
It goes back to what I said earlier about being open and transparent, but I think you're missing something that could be more impactful, and that's the real work that happens before the board meeting, to have those conversations and those subcommittee meetings. And as far as having a vote's not possible because in the Constitution, it's 8 board members with a vote. But I'm not going so far as to say that there should be an ex officio member of the faculty there. But I would certainly engage in conversation with faculty as one of the stakeholders of the university, of the process here, if elected. I mean, that's always been my style of governance, to go out and hear what people are saying, hear how they can do better. I was on the board of a credit union. I go out and talk to the tellers. What's happening? I want your input. I talk to management. What's going on? Because you can't make great decisions in a vacuum. So we have to be better about that.
Dr. Diggs, did you want to comment specifically? Yeah.
I think it would be excellent to have a report from SACWA. Actually, what you said about the before the meeting is the best. That's actually really true, because the board meeting itself is very, in some sense, perfunctory, right? But the reading, like getting a report from SACWA each month that sort of outlines what's being discussed, what's being thought about, that I can read and digest ahead of time, that is really impactful. And I've often wondered why not. It's interesting because for like Student Government Association, some years we would have student SGA presidents who would write sort of regular reports or emails to send. Sort of, we had a really good sense of what was happening all of the time, and you can digest in the evening after work when you're sitting down thinking about these things. And then some presidents, you don't hear anything for the whole year. And so sometimes I think it's maybe feeling like there isn't a voice, but I was getting emails every day. I mean, you can send an email, and this is the monthly update for what's happening. And I think everyone would read it. I certainly would. But that is very impactful because you have a chance to digest, which is different than hearing the verbal report. Faculty members speak at each meeting, and it's good, but it's different from actually getting a chance to read it in a thoughtful way ahead of time and then being able to discuss things.
Thank you all very, very much. I'm sorry that I don't have time to ask more of the questions. They were all really, really thoughtful questions. I do want to give each of you an opportunity to make summary statements. And so I think since I started with Mr. Myers, I'm going to start with you again.
Start with me again?
Yes.
I'll get that out of the way. I want to start by thanking you for moderating this panel. It's been very interesting. It's been fulfilling. This is how I learn and how I understand what's happening. And the charge that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected and represent the citizens of Michigan on the Board of Regents, University of Michigan, which is a job that I certainly don't take lightly, that we have to do better at engagement. We have to do better at trust. We have to do better at openness in transparency. And we have to recognize when we see a wrong on campus, it has to be dealt with, whether it's Islamophobia or anti-Semitism. It has to be dealt with. I'm not afraid to do that. In my own community, after the events of 10/7, the city was painted with a broad brush, and the Wall Street Journal let somebody write a scathing letter to the editor, degrading the city of Dearborn, calling it a terrorist haven, and it was wrong. I was the one that wrote the letter to push back to the Wall Street Journal. I'm a Republican. I mean, someone said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing what's right." So my philosophy is to do what's right. I'm late in my career. I will come to the board unfiltered and ready to represent the citizens of Michigan and involve all of the stakeholders. And initially, I plan to hold open office hours to see how that goes at the beginning of my term, to create a better dialogue with faculty, with students and administrators. I think it's crazy to be in a silo, in an echo chamber, talking to only the others that you choose to talk to, because you never get any additional information. But once again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come here tonight. This is interesting, it was exciting, and it was enriching for me. Thank you.
Dr. Dix.
Thank you. So thank you very much for having us today. I think it's been very provocative conversation. I am actually the product of two university professors. Both my parents went to Michigan for masters and PhDs back in the 1960s, at another time when there was a lot of conflict on campus. And so I've had a couple conversations with my parents about the similarities between the 60s and now. But I'll tell you that despite all of this, I'm an extremely positive person, and I believe in the power of higher education to improve the lives of all of us. And so that is why I'm running for reelection. Medicine is my practice, but higher education is my passion. And I do believe that because of all the things we've discussed today, that we need experienced leadership on the board to help navigate these waters. There are many concerns that I have about the University of Michigan, some of which we've discussed today, but there are also others. Can we continue to have excellence in academic programming? Can we continue to have good access for students? Can we take care of all three campuses? So many times when I'm traveling around the state, everyone talks about Ann Arbor. I actually think about University of Michigan as being Flint, Dearborn, and Ann Arbor. And there are campuses that really need additional resources, additional strategic thinking, and I like to focus on a three-campus strategy. Can we have a culture that protects our community from discrimination and sexual misconduct while still engaging everyone and having difficult conversations? How are we going to invest in technologies for the future? And how do we support a healthcare system that's growing and actually represents over half the budget of the university? So I'm committed to helping deal with all of these issues. And I do believe that the challenges are not insurmountable. I think it's actually possible to have, people like to say, well, if we have that, we can't have this. I actually think just the opposite. It's completely possible to have affordable college education and still be a world-class research center. We can have a campus culture that embraces conflict resolution. We can be inclusive and still be competitive. We can educate students in an environment that is free of violence and discrimination, fear, and misconduct, and we can still all be for civil liberty and freedom of speech. I think that with thoughtful leadership on the board, we can ensure that U of M not only tackles the challenges, but is a leader across the country for universities and helping other institutions see the way forward through these challenges. Thank you.
Oh, what can I say? Shauna said everything really, really well. I'm quite optimistic about the future because we're having these conversations. We don't always agree, but we can still be civil and try and change each other's minds and learn more. And what a better place to learn than from the students and the faculty here. I mean, the students here are just amazing. I mean, my son just graduated in May, biomedical engineering. I'm very proud of him. And his friends, you know, they're all so intelligent. Their futures are so bright. This U of M education is worth a lot, not just because of the 4 years of learning, but everything that it carries forward with you in life. You know, one of my favorite things about being an alum is, you know, if I'm traveling, at the airport, it doesn't matter if I could be in New York, I could be in France. You see someone else wearing some, you know, U of M swag, you just walk by and say, "Go Blue," and they give you that nod, and you know it's special. And it's special because of what we all do together. I can't explain it. I mean, you know, this is a pretty crappy job I'm applying for. All right. I mean, when everything's going great, no one complains, right? But they only call you when they have complaints. But this school was special to me when I was here. It's special to my son, and I just want to see it. You know, hopefully, grandkids, granddaughters, grandsons. I mean, I'd love to see that tradition continue. And people, the general public, a lot of them, ask you about, when you're running for these races, they ask you about the football team and what's going on with the basketball coach and this and that. My passion is with the academic side. When I see U of M at the top of the academic rankings, in law school, business school, it makes me so proud. I mean, for so many years, I got used to seeing U of M winning the solar car race in Australia every year. It got boring after a while, but still, it's a big deal to be at the top of your game all the time, and we're growing and we're changing, and I want to be a part of that, and I want to hear from you. I want to be much more collaborative than the impression I'm getting is there's not a lot of collaboration here, and it's important for us to not make decisions in a vacuum, like Carl said. So I look forward to having a lot more of these conversations over the next 8 years, and I'm not going to be back here in 2 years for this forum. Okay, so let's get me elected, and we'll work together.
Thank you again to our 3 candidates for Regent, and thank you to our audience. You're a wonderful audience. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry again I didn't get to all of your questions.